everyone, my name is Savannah. Welcome back to Planet Zoo and our fall/October build for the year. Every year I like to do something fall/October themed just because I am such a big fan of the holidays and obviously spooky season starting that off towards the end of the year. So today, as you might be able to tell by the thumbnail and the title, we're building a bat house. Now, I originally started building this bat house before the Oceania pack released, having no idea that we were going to be getting a brand new bat species. So I was actually making it for the Egyptian fruit bat, which we already had in the game. And so you can see here when I start, that's what I have inside the walkthrough enclosure. But after the Oceania pack released and I found out that we were getting the spectacled flying fox, it just kind of fit perfectly. And so this build got put on hold while I covered the release of the Oceania pack. And then I was able to finish it up only a few days ago, actually, if you're watching this video right when it goes live. So obviously I'm using the walkthrough exhibit box, and you will probably not be surprised to hear that the most difficult part about this was that I wanted to make a small building, and the box is rather large. The walkthrough box is rather large, and that's not a new complaint from many Planet Zoo players, that the exhibit boxes, even the little square ones, are very, very large. So I actually end up building around this and cutting the exhibit basically in half with build pieces. Now that means that the bats still do clip in and out of the back wall because they really do have access to the entire exhibit. There's no way to limit that. But as far as when you're looking at the end cinematics and the screenshots of this build, it looks like they have a much smaller space than they actually do. And that's because it looks better, in my opinion. I was much happier with it being a very small enclosed space. I was actually using a reference photo from the San Diego Zoo, the Wild Animal Park, now called the Safari Park. They have a little bat house there, and it's very small. But basically, I was taking really large amounts of inspiration from that building and not really creating a one-to-one, but if you know that building, I'm sure you can recognize, because I really did use a lot of inspiration from that. And you can see here, I'm not even building as tall as the exhibit box either. I cut that in half, basically with the roof. And then later on, I go on the inside and I actually use some, I think it was plaster pieces, to kind of make the roof a little bit lower as well. Just again, because I wanted it to be a little bit smaller, a little bit more intimate of an exhibit, and a little bit more realistic looking for what exhibit I was basing it on. Now, I have been to zoological parks that have much bigger aviaries for their bats, or enclosures for their bats. Animal Kingdom has a kind of walk-in bat exhibit that's a little bit bigger than the one at the Wild Animal Park, but still, I was looking for a little bit more of a, like I said, intimate exhibit. So I'm using lots of pieces that you've seen me use 1,000 times before, and at this point, the Oceania pack still hasn't come out, so you won't see me utilizing any of those pieces. However, as we get further into the build, I do start to bring those in, namely the fence piece, the kind of wooden driftwood fence piece. Absolutely loved that one, and I thought it fit really well on the outside. As I was trying to figure out the roof, you might have been able to notice, or if you're watching, you see that I used the Australia kind of corrugated metal pieces at first. I really like that roof piece, but it's not FlexiColor, and that's one of my biggest issues with it, is that I really can't get the exact tone and color that I want out of it, even though the texture and the pattern is beautiful. I love it so much, but it really only fits a very niche area of builds, and this one just wasn't it. So I switched to this kind of corrugated metal roof because it is recolorable. So I was able to pick that kind of burnt brown reddish color that I was going for. And then here, I'm starting work on custom doors. I worked really hard on these doors, so hopefully you guys like them and think they look good. I really wanted to implement that kind of barn style. This building in real life is all kind of made of wood, beams, and pieces like that. So that's really what I was going for. These doors are obviously not functional, they're just decorative, but I think they work out really, really well. And in this build, you'll get to see a very minimal amount of interior as well. Now, I will say I do not do a whole lot of interior because if you know me, you know how much I don't like doing the interiors. I just don't think I'm that good at it, to be honest, and I really don't think they ever turn out that well. So I do a very minimal amount of interiors, mostly working on some framing pieces to go inside the bat exhibit itself to kind of create a space where the bats would be able to hang from, or keepers would be able to hang food from, things like that. And that way it's not just a big open space. I do use a couple blueprints in this build, and I want to shout them out before I forget because I'm always so terrible. But you'll see at the very end of the video, we're going to implement some custom signs, and those signs actually come from Borkey, B-O-R-K-E-Y, on the workshop, on the Steam workshop. So if you're interested in getting those, they've made a whole bunch of them. And I feel like they're going to be my new favorite thing because they're very detailed, very intricate, and they look phenomenal. So those are going to be the signs that I use. And then at the very end, to give this kind of the October fall overlay, I use some of my own blueprints from decorations that I've made in years past, but I also use some of Patsy 9247's workshop items because they are so cute. It's P-A-T-Z-I 9247. They're beautiful, and they just have a really good little layout of some very small kind of decorative pumpkin layout pieces, so I end up using those as well. But again, because this is our kind of October build, I couldn't go a whole build without putting in some pumpkins, and you can see that I use some kind of autumn colored trees with the yellows and the oranges. And I think it came out really well. So this build is actually really easy to transition between October and, you know, what would be like normal time of the year. You just replace some of those trees with, you know, green ones to get rid of the kind of fall autumn colors. And then just removing all of the pumpkins and lanterns and branches and things like that turns it back into just an everyday kind of zoo build. So I was really happy with how that came out. I was challenging myself to build a realistic exhibit that looked like it was just, again, had an overlay for fall or October. And I think I accomplished that really, really well. Here, instead of the mulch, because that was a little bit too dark for what I was looking for, I'm actually just using the underside of this garden flower piece, which I actually tend to like a little bit better than the mulch. The only issue that I have with this one is it tends to have that like Z fighting issue where it glitches in between the pieces a little bit more so than the mulch does. But if you can get around that and, you know, increase your patience a little bit, you can get it to work real well. And I think it just fit this kind of warm toned orange yellow kind of vibe we're going for. We're going for fall, of course. So then starting the foliage on the outside, landscaping, putting in a little bit of a ground cover and then the leaves on the ground as well. Just really going through and being picky about what plants I'm using. I wanted it to look landscaped, but not like perfectly landscaped, a little bit overgrown, and just kind of to cover the whole area. I do end up putting little stepping stones into the back and putting a hose on the back wall so it looks like, you know, keepers or landscapers could get back there with a hose and do some watering. I don't know if they would have like built-in irrigation or anything like that, but obviously that's an option for planter areas like this as well. But I'm using a mixture of mostly the temperate foliage just because that is honestly, it's my go-to. I like a lot of the plants from the temperate section the most. So I tend to just kind of gravitate towards that. But that also just kind of fit this build in my opinion. Being a very typical kind of belonging in a city zoo, or I guess in a San Diegan zoo, because that's what this is. I just kind of felt like it fit real well. This obviously is what I call a one-off build. This isn't in a project that I currently have going on. In fact, it's actually in what I've named my October zoo. And if you're new to the channel, this is something that I do every year. The first year I built a llama enclosure, and last year, was it llama first? What the heck did I build last year? I built something. This is a yearly thing. And clearly my memory is failing me. But I've done I did a raccoon enclosure, the second one. There it is. So I did llama, and then I did raccoon, and then this year is a bat build. So I kind of like to do holiday themes. Last year, I kind of missed out on Christmas, if I remember right. So I need to do better this year and do something Christmassy. But I've done reindeer in the past. Maybe this year I'll do polar bear. That seems a bit optimistic and ambitious, but maybe I'll do polar bear. We'll see. Let me know what you think down in the comments. That's going to be my question for you this episode here. This video is, what animal would you like to see for Christmas? Because I would love to do like a winter wonder themed exhibit. Winter Wonderland themed exhibit. There you go. I can get my words correct. So yeah, that's kind of what this is. So let me know what you think. The other thing that I want to let you all know about as we're talking about fall and October and all that kind of stuff is that we actually have an October build contest going on our Discord. So our Planet Zoo contests are where there are a set of rules put forth that everybody has to follow. You build something and then anonymously submit it. Anonymous to everybody else, not anonymous to me, because I have to know who built what. But you submit it to me via email. Then it's all put together in a voting forum. And everybody can vote on their favorite build. And the top 3 builds get showcased here on the channel. This is something that I've done for a few years now. And I absolutely love seeing what you all come up with. And October is the time where we always do our fall/Halloween. It's kept very broad and very general in the theming, so that if you don't want to do something specifically Halloween themed, you can just do something fall themed, which is kind of honestly what this build, what I'm doing here today is. So if you're interested in joining, you can join our Discord for the full set of rules. The link is down in the description below. If you aren't on Discord, but you still want to participate, you are welcome to head over to my website, and all the rules are listed out there as well. And because you submit your build via email, you don't actually have to be a part of the Discord. However, it does make voting a little bit easier. So if you want to be a part of the voting, I highly recommend joining the Discord, because you get alerted when voting is opened. But if you just want to build and submit your build for the contest and aren't worried about the voting at all, then just head over to my website and all the rules are listed there and how to submit your build. We have about 20 days. I think I made it due on October 27th. So if you are interested in building, you still do have quite a bit of time to get that in and submitted to be a part of it. So I look forward to see what you are going to build. We're moving on into the interior here, and like I said, honestly, it's mostly plants and just kind of covering up some loose ends and things like that that are kind of sticking through the building. I do fix those leaves that are hanging through in the top right-hand corner there, and just decorating this bat exhibit. Now, bats being obviously arboreal animals, are going to be hanging off of sticks and things like that in this exhibit. They're not really going to be spending a whole lot of time on the ground. I left the ground fairly blank. This would make it easier for keepers to, rake up after the bats and keep the area clean and things like that. But I did want to add some, plants here and there and some rocks just to make it a little bit interesting so it's not so plain. I'm using these brand new rope netting pieces that came with the Oceania pack. I love the texture and the little details of the knots in between each of the cross sections of rope. So I thought that turned out really, really well. You can see that I also have a keeper standing in here for height reference. And that's when I realized that this building is very, very tall. And here I'm starting to make the actual roof of the interior of the building so it doesn't look like it's that tall. I have a little section in the actual exhibit that goes a little bit higher just to make it not so boxy, to give it some sort of dimension and difference in height. But basically it's just to cut off and make the roof look a little bit nicer and cleaner, so you're not looking at the interior of the pitched roofing, because I cannot be bothered to make that look nice. There are so many creators that do such a good job at making pitched roofing look so beautiful from the inside, and that's just not me. At least it's not me for this build. I don't have the patience. I don't want to do it. So working on that, and then that's pretty much it as far as like structural interior stuff. I do end up adding a few different signs. I played around with different wall textures in here, and I think if I remember right, I end up just going back to the original wood paneling on the inside, just because I thought I didn't find anything else that I really liked all that much. I kind of thought about this Oceania wall piece for a second here. I really wanted to use the Australia wall pieces, and I do at first, but again, they're not flexi colored, and they have that little bit of like blue and green in them that just don't fit well with the color scheme of this build. You can see I kind of toyed with making a custom one, and then I very quickly gave up on that idea because I could not be bothered. It was going to be too much, too many pieces, and I ended up just liking the original wood that's in there in the first place. So I ended up kind of tossing that idea out the window and moving forward. But like I said, I do add a few different signs in here, and then a custom flooring at the very end, which I almost forgot, but I do end up adding that, and that's about it for the interior. While we continue to work on that, how about we talk about the spectacled flying fox just a little bit, because you all know, if you're not new to the channel, I do like to include some information about the animals that we're building for, because I myself am an animal nerd and I love learning about these animals, and I love sharing that with you. Flying foxes are hard-working little Aussies. They work the night shift, flying out from their camps at dusk to feed on flowering or fruiting plants and trees. And then they do the incredibly important job of spreading pollen and seeds, up to 60,000 seeds each along a 50-kilometer stretch of land every night. When their crucial work is done, they head back to camp before dawn to sleep throughout the day, ready for their next shift. Their contribution to the health of our native forest cannot be overstated. There are only 4 species of flying fox in Australia, 3 of which are often seen flying and roosting in the Hunter and Central Coast region. Flying foxes are nomadic mammals that travel up and down the east coast of Australia, primarily along the eastern coastal plain. Gray-headed flying foxes are found from Ingram, 110 kilometers north of Townsville in Queensland, through New South Wales and south to Victoria, and are now even found in South Australia. Spectacled flying foxes are found north of Ingham in Queensland. Am I saying that right? Ingham? Ingham, I think is how that's said. Correct me if I'm wrong. Flying foxes are intelligent, social animals that live in large colonies comprised of individuals and family groups. They roost in trees during the day and establish permanent and semi-permanent camps near food sources and for birthing. They use various calls as a form of communication, tending to make the most noise at dawn and dusk when flying out to feed at night or returning to camp trees to sleep during the day. They can get pretty noisy when they are disturbed, but during the day, flying foxes are generally quiet as they are nocturnal animals. Flying foxes are the largest flying mammal in Australia. They are critical to ensuring the survival of our great Australian eucalypt forests and the overall health of our ecosystem. They are keystone pollinators for Australian bush, pollinating flowers of over 50 native trees. The pollen sticks to their fur while they're feeding on the nectar of the flowers, and then as they fly off, they are able to pollinate many trees over long distances. Flying foxes create new forests by dispersing seeds from the fruit they eat. They are vegetarians that forage on the fruit of over 50 native rainforest trees and vines. Their excellent vision and keen sense of smell helps them navigate their way over vast landscapes. Each flying fox can spread up to 60,000 seeds across 50-kilometer stretch of land in one night. Contrary to what you may have heard, flying foxes are very clean animals that are constantly grooming and cleaning themselves. However, they also communicate by scent. Odors are used to identify camp trees, each other, and also attract mates. Mothers are able to locate their pups in the trees by their scent and calls. Flying fox numbers have decreased dramatically over the last 50 years due to continual loss of habitat and changing climatic patterns. Gray-headed flying foxes are now listed as vulnerable to extinction. Urban encroachment, land clearing, agricultural, and drought have led to flying foxes seeking alternative habitats such as patches of bushland in urban areas in which to roost and forage. This has brought them increasingly close to humans, creating conflict. So now, more than ever, we need to find ways to coexist with this incredibly important native species. And it is not just their survival that is at stake. The 2009 Federal Draft Species Recovery Plan for gray-headed flying foxes identified that protection of the species would benefit 6 threatened listed plants species and populations, 57 threat-listed vegetation communities, and 26 threat-listed birds and 19 threat-listed mammals. So a very important little animal to Australia's ecosystem. I mean, all animals are obviously important, but these guys being a keystone pollinator, very, very important. Getting back to the build, we are just finishing up the interior of the actual bat house itself, and I was actually pleasantly surprised when I went to duplicate these kind of like hanging platform thingamajiggies, that's the technical term by the way, that the pieces do actually exist. Like the bars and things are the ones that we got as extra individual pieces to build with, so I was actually able to replicate it basically one for one exact. So I was pleasantly surprised about that. So I was able to make one that looked just like it, and then also one that has a bit of a slant to it, just to give the impression that these bats have more areas to hang off of than just the one that is visible in the walkthrough exhibit. There are, of course, a couple in the walkthrough exhibit, but the other one I cut off with that back wall. So I'm just getting these ones included here to give the bats multiple places to land on. And then as you saw, as we were talking about the bat information, I implemented those climbing frames, or those hanging frames, I guess they would be, of wood and rope and the little ladder pieces. And I also used some plants hanging upside down, as those would be like browse that the keepers would cut from various plants or trees or have delivered, or however they get access to the browse and the fresh plants and stuff that these bats would need, with like the fruits and stuff I'm imagining hanging off of them, just to give them a more natural area to feed the bats. So I'm really happy with how that came out. And in fact, actually, as I'm watching this, I need to remember to go ahead and put that up on the workshop. This exhibit as a whole is going to be really, really difficult to make a blueprint. But those climbing frames, or those landing hanging frames, whatever you want to call them, those won't be. Those are easy to put up on the workshop. I don't know if I will put this whole thing on the workshop, because it would be really difficult to kind of fit in the exhibit as it is. I'll play around with it and see what I can do, but I'm not making any promises, unfortunately. Sometimes because I don't necessarily build things that the game likes the best, sometimes they don't necessarily work real well implementing them into a zoo as a blueprint, if that makes any sense at all. So hopefully that's okay, and this gives you inspiration if you can't just like use it straight over. Now that we're done with the inside and we're done with the exterior, we're going to move on and do some fallifying, some Octoberifying. So this is where we are using those blueprints that I mentioned in the very beginning of the video. You can see I pulled out a couple of mine, but then this one that we're using specifically right now is the other creator, and I've already forgotten their name. I apologize, but I did shout that out in the beginning of the video. Using those to put little pumpkins around. These are my spider webs that I made for the original llama exhibit. So getting those in there, and these of course would just be props that the zoo would bring out during October to kind of put into or around their exhibits to make them beautiful for the fall time. And I'm really happy with how this turned out. I think it's so cute as a little fall October themed exhibit. And yeah, I'm just really happy with it. There's not many builds. Actually, I shouldn't say that. I'm happy with all my builds, but sometimes I'm just like a little bit extra happy with my builds. And this one is definitely one of them. So hopefully you guys like it as well. From here, we're just going to take this fence and do some extra little surrounding stuff. Sometimes when I build one-off habitats, they look a little plain if they're not like extended into another zoo project. So I do a little bit of building just to make them extend a tiny bit. And that way for things like, you know, a thumbnail or the end cinematics, you don't get all this blank stuff. But there you go. There is the final product. We're just going to take some good looks with some cinematics here. You can see the bats flying all over the place. I obviously didn't let guests into the zoo because guests are the worst, but you get the idea of what it would look like. And yeah, I can't say anything else besides the fact that I'm real happy for it. Do let me know what you think down in the comment section below. And again, let me know what you would want to see for Christmas build as far as animals go. If you're team polar bear, I guess I'll just suffer a little bit. But if you have an idea about a different animal that I could build a winter wonderland for, do let me know. And while you're down there, of course, leave a like and hit the subscribe button. It really does help me out, and make sure that you don't miss out on any future Planet Zoo content or any of the other cozy animal content that we have here on the channel. New to the channel is Paleo Pines, and I'm really loving that playthrough. So if you're interested, be sure to check that out. But that's it for me. I'll talk to you in the next video. Bye.